Parents across America struggling continued to trying to feed their babies and looking into the White House for answers to the growing crisis. The administration reached an agreement with Abbott Laboratories to reopen its Michigan baby formula plant. Because remember, it was shuttered over questions of contamination, but was cleared by the FDA and the CDC. But still no formula. 43% of formula now, because of just not doing anything, is out of stock. The FDA estimates it's affecting at least 2.7 million babies nationwide. Well, now the FDA is studying it and giving us percentages. Wow. Even the liberal media are losing their patience.
Soon sounds good if you don't have a baby who's hungry. Soon sounds terrifying if you do.
Soon means as quickly as we can get Abbott and manufacturers to make sure that they can increase product again because it is safe to consume.
I'm just wondering if you can give me something clear in terms of quantity of days or weeks or months. Is it days? Is it weeks? Is it going to be a few months?
The question is more properly posed to Abbott because Abbott is the one that can guarantee the safety.
You mean the White House and the administration haven't gotten on the phone with Abbott for a timeline? You do that when you order furniture for your house. You get the timeline of delivery, so you can be home when it gets there. New White House press secretary Jean-Pierre offering up some deflection.
We've been working on this 24/7. Getting more safe and fit formula onto shelves across the country is one of the president's top priorities. We have been working on this since we learned about this back in February. It's important to remember this shortage exists because Abbott closed a facility because of safety concerns from the FDA.
So in January and in February, when lawmakers were sending letters to this administration saying we need help in our states, you've got Josh Hawley in Missouri, where they're at that below 50% level on their shelves now for some time. When you heard from them at the White House, apparently they just thought they'd blame Abbott. When they've got a stockpile with FEMA, I could go all day. Breaking this hour, Nestle has announced that it has brought shipments of formula from Europe to the United States. Nestle is going to help. Jason Rantz, Seattle radio talk show host in Focus. I just first want to get your top line thoughts on how this has played out.
Well, I think it's rather interesting, the optics of this. You have the Democratic Party fighting for the right to an abortion of a child, but they are not fighting for the right to feed a child. It feels to me like we could also be rallying for the mothers and fathers who are trying to get their kids fed, and yet we're not getting any sense of urgency. They can claim all they want that they've been working on this since February. If that is true, and of course it's not, but if it's true, then that is total incompetence. That is total failure, because they really only acted within the last week because of the political pressure that they just couldn't ignore anymore.
Well, look, when I bring up the FDA and FEMA, it's not just on a lark. We have disasters, weather disasters in this country. We have to have a stockpile. So here's an expert on the matter. She sits as the ranking member on the FEMA subcommittee in Homeland. Congresswoman Kat K-Mack on the shortage on the Focus yesterday.
I, for the last year, have been going after FEMA and the administration, asking why they spent over $130 million out of the food and emergency temporary housing budget to fly and bus illegals around the United States. Instead of using those funds for Americans, they have been paying for plane tickets and bus tickets, and they have spent over $130 million through NGOs. They don't want to give us the information.
She is really pushing, Jason, and this is a bona fide emergency, and we didn't tap that. We didn't go there because a lot of those funds are being spent elsewhere.
Absolutely. And remember, we release some gasoline from our reserves, and that has no impact whatsoever on the crisis. And yet this would have an impact on the crisis, releasing some of this baby formula. But they are choosing not to do that because they don't understand the priorities of the American people. They're busy on all of these other issues that have nothing to do with the day-to-day lives of Americans. That's where they're focused. We do not come first under this administration, and now mothers can absolutely say they definitely don't come first.
Wow. Transportation Secretary, we know he needs formula, 2 little ones, he and his husband. He was speaking yesterday, about baby formula and the shortage, so on and so forth. But he's in privileged land. Nobody has a doubt that he can get his hands on some. A weekend of chaos and violence, exceptional, even for Chicago. A mob of hundreds of unruly teenagers, essentially taking over the city's so-called Millennium Park. It's a place where they like to gather. Mayor Lightfoot announced an extension of the weekend park curfew for minors after a 16-year-old was shot and killed by another teenager in that park. Chicago police say over the weekend there were at least 33 shootings with 9 minors, young victims. 5 people were killed, 3 of them minors. A Wall Street Journal op-ed called out the mayor for presiding over a massacre as usual in Chicago, adding, if you want to understand Chicago's public order problem in a nutshell, there it is. Normal policing is considered criminalizing youth, as opposed to getting criminals off the streets. Instead, the mayor won't let unaccompanied teens visit a city park alone in the evenings on weekends. Does anybody really believe this will make a difference, assuming it is even enforced? Jason.
Yeah, well, number one, it likely won't be enforced because you have a Chicago Police Department that unfortunately doesn't have the staff that it needs because of all the Democrat policies that ended up leading to this mass exodus of police officers. On top of that, I'm glad she's doing something, and I'm glad she's talking about it, I suppose. We have to have bigger conversations about the family structure in this country and why that is in large part why so many teenagers are straying and going down the pathway of violence. But again, we don't really hear these stories every single day outside of Fox News. And I wonder why that is. And it's pretty simple. You can easily politicize a mass shooting on the left, and that's what they do on MSNBC and CNN and the New York Times and Washington Post. They'll talk about that because they can use it to go after Republicans. And yet somehow they can't talk about the daily murders that go on in cities like Chicago and others. Why? Because they can't politicize it, because they don't want to go after their own. And every once in a while, they tiptoe into having those conversations about wondering whether or not Lori Lightfoot is the right person to handle this kind of crisis. But for the most part, they stay away because they can't target Republicans. And that's why, in large part, we continue to see this kind of crime go because no one's paying attention outside of very, very few voices.
You mean they can't target Democrats and all of that?
Exactly.
Yeah. Just real quickly on Lori Lightfoot, she has come quite a distance. I mean, there was the defund the police, then, oh my gosh, we need help, we need this, we can't fight all the crime, to she can't handle this chaos of teenagers. School is still in session. Imagine, in a month. Your last quick thoughts.
Yeah, I just wish she would step back and say, I screwed up. I apologize. I'm now going down the right path, and here's my plan. But no one on the left on this issue seems to acknowledge the mistakes.
Tom Homan mentioned it, too, about the border and the White House. A plan, something that we don't leave our house with when we leave our house. We have to have a plan, something we can't live without. Whether we nail it or not, it's always a good suggestion to have a plan. Jason Rantz, thank you very much.